Welcome, everyone, and good afternoon. I'm Glendice Virginia Luciano. I will be moderating this session. And welcome to Delivering Outcomes, the impact of the hidden middle on food security and supply chains. We're going to start with some opening remarks from Ms. Aya Hietavo, Chief Corporate Affairs at Tetra Pak. Over to you, Ms. Aya.
Thank you. Great to be here with this amazing audience that we have here today, co-hosting this with colleagues from UNIDO. And I think rather than talking empty words, I'd like to say a few words about what we've been doing here so far, because this is really the last session that I will be participating in, but we have other colleagues coming in. So we've been talking a lot about the hidden middle of the food sector in the sessions that we've had either been hosting or participating, but not just to talk about, but really take action. And we had yesterday a consultation here in the neighboring very warm and nice room where we convened, I think it was almost 15 different institutions or co-convened with UNIDO, these institutions and governments and other stakeholders to talk about this same topic, but with the aim of actually taking action in convening a coalition. And very happy to say that all the participants agreed to join the coalition. So now I think we can expand on that, and those who will be speaking today, maybe this is also an invitation to also hear more about the coalition and opportunities to collaborate. I think driving for results and having tangible solutions is really important. And when we talk about the hidden middle of the food systems and the opportunities to decarbonize or drive sustainability there, a lot of the solutions are available. So it really is how are we going to mobilize the technologies, how we're going to optimize the policies, and how we're going to get the finance to actually do the job. So with those words, I think we are ready to kick off our discussion.
Thank you so much, Aya. I'm actually very intrigued to hear more about this coalition and the discussion. So I do invite the panelists later on to expand on that, as you mentioned. Now, before we get into the panel, I do want to invite, just for an opening keynote, Dr. Shengen Fan from the China Agricultural University to just really give us, an introduction over here. So over to you.
Thank you so much. Just a couple of points. Number one is missing middle or hidden middle or neglected middle is so critical for our food systems. One is obviously in terms of economy, the middle part usually produces 2 or 3 times bigger than production itself. For example, in China, I always use China as an example. I worked for IPRI, International Food Policy Research Institute, for 25 years. But 5 years ago, I went back to China. For China, so agriculture GDP is about 6% of the national GDP. However, if you include the middle part, it's 1/4. So you can see several times bigger. Then in terms of employment, again, the middle part employs a lot of people, whether it's formal, informal sectors, so economy and employment, huge role. But they face challenges. So one challenge is in the middle part. Globally, we lose 13% of our food just in the middle. Now in the middle, we also lose quite a bit nutrition. As you know, in the middle part, we have lots of overly processed foods. So all the vitamins, iron, zinc, and vitamin A have been lost during the processing stage. So what do we do? So whole grains, fruits, vegetables, and obviously we need proteins. But proteins from beans or from alternative proteins can really substitute red meat. Then yes, emissions. The whole food system is 1/3, right, of the total emissions. But the middle part itself could be quite a big. Just the food loss and waste is already probably 8 to 10% of the global total emissions. So we are facing big challenge there. Then energy use, I must emphasize the energy use. I mean, if you go to the Chinese pavilion, every side event is on energy, renewable energy, to really move away from fossil energies. Unfortunately, I mean, in our food system, the majority of the energy still comes from fossil oil, not from renewable. So what should we do? One is policy. We know that there are different interest groups in the whole food systems. The middle part, we have different players. We have some of the big food processing companies. They really grasp the big power. But in the meantime, there are lots of small, informal workers, including women, who are preparing food and processing food. They are disadvantaged. So the big problem is the big players versus small players. So how do we make sure that small players like informal traders, informal food, let's say processors, can be empowered through certain incentives, certain policies, and so on. And this is so critical. So the policy part, can we use certain government subsidies to help smallholders, help the small processors, small traders to really compete with the big guys? The technological innovation in the middle part. One is, I mentioned about the nutrition loss. Can we use fortification, biofortification, to really enhance the nutrition elements of our food, to not overly process? So the nutrition part. And then obviously the infrastructure, storage, all this can help to transport vegetables, fruits from smallholders to the markets. Then the consumer behavior. I wanted to emphasize the consumer behaviors. So consumers need to know where the food comes from, who produced food, how food is produced. But towards the end of the day, it's the consumers who will decide where they purchase the food, how they are going to purchase the food. So this is so critical. And I wanted to make sure that now I'm back in China, include China in any one of your debates, including alternative proteins, and Nancy will discuss about this, including smallholders, including financing, that's from ADB. I mean, I spend most of the time in the China pavilion. China is quite open to work with anybody, all the different stakeholders. I mean, on agriculture and food, you have my commitment. So let's work together to really transform our food system, converting problem, challenge to solutions, and to a better world, better food system. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think that it's important to just highlight here, I love the optimism, because we know that it is obviously a challenge what we're dealing with the hidden middle. It's overlooked, but it's clear that it is it's a powerful area to look into. And you mentioned very clearly the need of having the right policies to be able to support that, the right targeted investments as well, to be able to support also smallholder farmers from farm production to consumption. And so with that, we're going to start with that optimism. I want to invite our panelists to come up. So we have here, once again, Ms. Aya Hietavo from Tetra Pak. So please join us on the stage. We have also Ms. Fiona Dungan, a Global Sustainability Senior Manager at Unilever. So please do join us. And I want you guys to give a round of applause, just so that as people are coming up. I want to also invite Mr. Lasse Brun, Director of Climate and Food at UN Foundation. And then also Mr. Ali Bernadotte, Chief of Food Security and Food Systems Unit at UNIDO. And last but certainly not least, we have Ms. Esmira Javier, Senior Climate Change Specialist from the Asia Development Bank. So please do join us. Now, Esmira, I invited you last, and yet you're going to be going first today. So our question to you is, I'm just going to give you one for now. Given the shift in global funding priorities, which we know is something that many of us are dealing with, how can development finance institutions actually adapt to ensure that midstream actors can receive the adequate support? So we know that this is one of the pieces that we need to actually unlock the power. So this is the question that we have for you. Let's see. Otherwise, can we pass the other mic? Yeah. There we go.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm just checking the time here. Yeah, so good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for inviting the Asian Development Bank to this session. So obviously, ADB being the Asia Bank with our member countries, agriculture figures in quite a bit in terms of one of the critical sectors. Not just a critical sector in terms of economy, but of course, for obvious reason, that is highly impacted by climate change. So ADB, we recognize the midstream actors as critical enablers of resilience and market connectivity. They drive value addition, storage, transport, which are all essential at reducing post-harvest losses and improving food quality and food security. However, these midstream investments are also vulnerable to climate-induced hazards and degraded, outdated infrastructure, financial barriers, as well as as the question has highlighted, geopolitical and trade policy complexities. So ADB views that development finance institutions, DFIs, must move beyond upstream focus models and adopt integrated programmatic approaches that prioritize midstream actors or the hidden middle. So this could include bundling investments across value chains for systematic impact, aligning financing with national priorities through climate adaptation and food system plans, expanding credit access for agribusiness SMEs via financial intermediation loan, and supporting policy reforms to strengthen regulations, food safety, and market integration. And just to highlight, from our perspective, ADB is responding at scale and with ambition. So from 2026 to 2030, we are channeling significant resources into food systems transformation, emphasizing natural capital, resilient river basins, sustainable rice production, nutrition security, with planned investments of amounting to over 26 billion in the next 5 years. So under our operational approach for food systems transformation in Asia and the Pacific, which is currently being drafted, 2 pillars are directly linked to the hidden middle. One is strengthening agri-food value chains, and 2, upgrading infrastructure for resilient food system. So the remaining pillars of natural capital, nutrition, healthy diets, and social protection and regional cooperation create enabling measures that complement some of these pillars. So I think together with that operational approach, they can deliver end-to-end solutions that integrate midstream actors into resilient, inclusive, and sustainable food systems. And I'll stop there for now. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Ismira. I mean, I think this is great news to know that it definitely is a priority to include midstream actors and that it is something that you guys are prioritizing. So we've heard now your perspective to start, but now we're going to move to hear from a multilateral foundation UN system perspective. So Lasse, I'm going to go over to you. So how can multilateral institutions like the UN Foundation help elevate the hidden middle in global food systems dialogues, which obviously we're all here, and financing frameworks as well?
Thank you so much, Glindis. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear
Great.
you.
So where do we start? There's so many ways to address this, and I'm going to try to keep it simple and short. I think first and foremost, we need to look at some of the existing initiatives, and one of the first I'm going to point to is the FAST initiative by FAO. For some years, there was some back and forth between governments as to which would be the best multilateral platform for food and agriculture. And after a lot of work, and particularly by Kaveh Zahidi, who's the director of climate and biodiversity, the FAST initiative is now the center, the core of the FAO's initiative to try to get countries not just to change their policies for more climate resilient and food secure food systems, but also to attract funding to it. Now it's not all encompassing. It's not like the UNFCCC, but 194, 96, okay, depending on who's in and out. It's about, as far as I recall, 53 countries at the moment that are part of the FAST initiative, but the 53 strong countries. And that's a really good starting point for really going into the depth of what needs to happen to have the funding and the political framework and regulations in place to enable multilateral collaboration. Having said that, now, we heard a lot about from Baku to Belém. I like to talk about from Paris to Belém, the 10-year framework, right? Because now it's exactly 10 years ago. Today is the 13th. So it's 10 years and 1 day since the Paris Accord was agreed. I remember the gavel going down there. And part of that, of course, was to look into both mitigation and adaptation. And with that in mind, as we all know, adaptation has been not the centerpiece for so many years. It is starting to come up now. Now there are right now negotiations on the GGA, which is great, but it's still by and large not as prominent as mitigation. And I think there's some opportunities there, particularly for food and climate change. For food and agriculture, to really use the GGA and the increased focus on adaptation, and link that back to the Paris Agreement. Which leads me to my next point, which is everything has to be anchored in national policy or even subnational policy. All we do here is talk. There's nothing that's legally binding. Nobody's going to have any repercussions or any kind of damages held against them as a country if they don't follow what's being discussed here. So we have to ensure that everything here sets the framework for national discussions and national implementation. And since we're talking about the hidden middle, I just want to mention something we did at UN Foundation last year. We did this new report called Increasing Ambition in Nationally Determined Contributions to Agriculture and Food Systems Innovation. Essentially, we went and we focused specifically on Africa. We went and we had the in-depth conversations and interviews with 16 specialists on food and agriculture, focusing on mitigation and adaptation in low and middle income countries, looking into what are the key takeaways from that. And we particularly wanted to focus on how we talk to people on the ground on what they needed, as opposed to making suggestions what we think might be needed. So we came down with a clean slate. Just tell us what you need. And just want to very briefly mention the 7 outcomes of that. Don't worry, it's going to be brief. And I can talk more in details about them later. The 7 key issues that low and middle income countries want to address, particularly looking at innovation and financing for food and agriculture in low and middle income countries, are the following: research and development systems, information systems, on-farm production, post-harvest handling, markets, finance, and policy. And finance, I think, here's the most important here. One of the key takeaways there, and I'm just going to read this: to validate new finance models for climate adaptation and mitigation in agriculture and food systems, greater coordination among governments and across sectors can increase fluency with climate-aligned investment needs and opportunities. So in other words, we need to have these agreements in place multilaterally, but they need to be coupled strongly to national policy and financing plans. I'll start there.
All right, thank you so much, Lasse. So you mentioned the NDCs, which we mentioned, of course, is the national determined contributions. We are in these multilateral spaces, but we do know that certain actors do have a more difficult time engaging in the process compared to others. And so thank you for the background, because I'm going to go over to Fiona from Unilever. And the question is, how can companies overcome the challenge that you guys currently face in engaging with NDCs, particularly in food supply chains? So over to you.
Thank you, and thank you for setting me up so well with your explanation of what NDCs are. So it can be a challenge for business to engage in NDCs, but it can be a challenge for many organizations to engage in NDCs. And I do want to say that in engagement with NDCs, it's very important. It's not just business voices that are being heard. It has to be civil society as well. And in September, we released a new report called Bold Plans, Real Impact. And it was all about how climate transition action plans can reinforce NDCs. because we think that NDCs could be quite powerful actually. They could be seen as 5-year investment plans, but currently they're not really working like that, because business want to help implement their agendas, because we share a lot of the same goals. You know, we support regenerative agriculture. Many countries also are trying to scale that up, but there is a disconnect. So how do we connect those things up? It's really not rocket science, a lot of it. It's things like appointing independent connectors. So, for example, I'll give an example for Sweden that could be applied into the agriculture space as well. There's a Fossil-Free Sweden, which is an independent body that now has 22 sectorial plans to decarbonize industries. That could also be done in a regen agriculture practice from various countries as well. And I think we are missing a trick there. I read, this is from a while ago, and actually I'm looking forward to reading your information that you supplied there. But in 2021, FOLU looked at NDCs, and half of them were missing any type of regenerative agriculture incentives. Now that's quite difficult, because we as a company, we want to grow soy through regenerative agricultural practices, and we will invest in that, and we will work with farmers on that, we'll work with suppliers on that, and we are working actually on that in the Cerrado at the moment for a Brazilian context, but that's hard if you don't have the enabling environment. So we need those NDCs to really be able to supply that. And I'll finish up, but I do want to add, it's not just the NDCs, it's the other Rio conventions as well. Because food, as all the experts here in the panel know, covers biodiversity, it covers land as well as climate. So it has to be all connected up. And none of them are all binding as well. Some of them are binding, but some of them are not. So you need to make sure that you have those national, local plans as well, because it has to be local for it to work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fiona. I have heard that there were conversations about connecting the Rio conventions and food being actually one of those main connectors. So that can be potentially good news, considering that next year we have the 3 Rio conventions coming up again. So it's probably a good opportunity for us to continue engaging and bringing this as a cross-cutting theme as well. Now, you mentioned the importance of the relationships, the facilitators that are needed to bring the different groups together. I'm going to turn to you, Ali Humanido, because I know you guys work very closely with governments, with private sector, and so what forms of collaboration between all of these different groups and mainstream actors have been the most effective in unlocking the value chain potential for food security?
Thank you. I think you made my life easier by just stressing on the need to go local and national, because the most effective approach of putting partners together is actually when we discuss things on the ground, where it matters, where things are clear and challenges are clear. So that's what maybe UNIDO is in a good position. Being an industrial development agency, you can imagine that we work with the industries, and the industries are really down there in the supply chains, taking decisions, investing, looking for markets. And for us to try to engineer a kind of a partnership or a coalition on that supply chain, we think it's the most effective one. This is where we like to say co-create solutions, co-create programs, because when you co-create, you share the responsibility, you share the accountability, and you share the investments, and you share the results and failures. And I think that's the challenge, where if you really manage to bring all those partners, public, private, academia, all the actors around the head and middle, in a specific supply chain, in a specific country, that's the challenge, to see that also who's the true partner in these engagements, because some they like to walk away from these ones, some they like to take the risk. Our experience with Tetra Pak, they took the risk and they joined us in a specific supply chains, and we share the responsibility. We might fail, we might be successful, but I think when we try to show success, more partners they can join. So again, the most effective approach is co-creation, which leads to co-responsibility, co-accountability. We figure out together what investments we need, what business case, what financing we need, what markets, and we sort it out together. We have a long list of examples. If it works, the challenge remains how we scale this up. And this is where the financing comes. Let's wish all those who are trying to unlock finance the best, but I think they need to look at the cases that works, that prove to be a true public-private partnerships that really unlocking the head and middle. Cases are there, solutions are there, innovations are there. The money is there. It's just about, it's not maybe in the right place. Thank you.
I mean, I don't have anything to add here, because you just gave me some amazing sound bites. The importance of co-creating, co-ownership, co-accountability. And I think in some ways that's what everyone has been saying, right? The shared responsibility of how we can all be solution bringers. You're mentioning particularly the importance of having those contextualized solutions and going directly on the ground, but then also in international spaces as well, bringing those conversations and making sure that they're integrated into the financing frameworks, into the global policy dialogues as well. Now, I know that, Anita, you work closely with Tetra Pak, so I'm going to go over to you specifically to ask, how are you guys working with midstream actors like your customers to strengthen the supply chain?
Does this work? Yep. So I think the uniqueness of Tetra Pak is the fact that we are really in the middle of the value chain. So talking about the middle of the value chain is kind of like, yeah, makes sense. So those of you who know us better from the packaging side, it's of course the beverage packaging, which we're most famous for. But I think in this context, it's also good to be reminded that we are one of the world's largest food manufacturing technology companies. So there are more than 100,000 little processing units somewhere there, which are manufacturing foods with our equipment. So indeed, we kind of are the engine often that is not really seen. And as a company with a very strong sustainability agenda, we of course take this very seriously, this role, and it creates a lot of opportunities both upstream and downstream for collaboration. So majority of our customers, even though that Unilever may be a very large customer, most of them are SMEs. And that, of course, creates challenges in terms of coming up with solutions that you can scale up. And therefore, collaboration, as mentioned before, across the value chain is really the key. And we need partners everywhere in the world because we are a global company. So we've been in Africa almost 70 years. We're very big in China, supposedly even via the Swedish development aid, we bought some of your cows to China, so there may be some Swedish DNA there. Maybe there's the UN Foundation may know about those as well. But so all in all, the solutions that we or areas where we collaborate, it's I think food loss and waste were mentioned. So there are a lot of opportunities in both via packaging, but more so increasingly also via manufacturing to address those. There are technology solutions to valorize waste as well, and many innovations that could be deployed, and these are all areas that we work with our customers. Access to food is really important, so we have a unit which is called Food for Development, which specifically works with smallholder farmers in developing world to make sure that our dairy processor customers have adequate and good quality and volumes of supply of milk. So these are just some of these examples that I could share.
Thank you so much. Now, I want to open it up for questions from the group, but also questions for the panelists. If you have a question for one another on the interventions, you're also welcome to come in, but I just want to check if there's anything in the room. Yes, please, go ahead.
Well, since I'm still working very closely with the government, each one of you can tell me what you want government to do. Just one.
Just. Okay. Does this work? No.
It is, yeah.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So implement policy reforms that supports SMEs, who are mostly the middlemen, the hidden middle. So you just said one, so okay.
I would say enable whole of government approach to climate change mitigation, particularly enable agriculture ministries to be better connected with climate and environment and finance. We've seen, some of the interviews and engagement we've done at UN Foundation to many governments. When talking to civil servants in the agriculture ministries, often they would say, what is an NDZ? I kid you not. And it's very difficult for ministries of agriculture to get their, whatever they want to achieve into the NDCs when they don't even understand or engaging. So enabling much better whole of government approach, I think, is going to be key to unlocking the funding and putting in place policies that can do national policy, but also enable public-private partnerships as well.
I needed to think about the question, so that's why I put some time. I mean, I will give two answers. First, tell me which government, I'll tell you maybe what they should do. Because we deal with 174 member states every day. Each country is different, each country is specific, so when it comes to food system transformation, it will be different. So I'll be honest with you if it's this country or that country. But there's one thing maybe common for all the countries. I think there's an exercise need to be done that to put all these national roadmaps, policies together. So the NDC is flying somewhere, the trade and market development strategy is somewhere else, industrial development strategy is somewhere else, name it. I think this is really a bit confusing to the governments, confusing to the private sector, confusing to the financing. So there needs to be an exercise where all these policies, strategies are aligned. Because when you read the industrial development strategy of a country, and then you go and read the NDC, they need to be connected. So that's an exercise I think is not only on the government, it's also on the development partners to work closely with the government to put more of an integrated policy framework that makes sense.
So coherency, okay.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we do need convergence, and to kind of, it's all about going down the different layers, isn't it? So we talk about national, then we're talking about actually making sure your trade policy connected to your agriculture policy, and then when you have the documents that are connected, are they actually talking about the same terms? So define the definitions, what you actually mean by regenerative agriculture. Make sure that there's a convergence around measurement and reporting and monitoring to make sure that you're not doing slightly different things for the same people. I think there could be a lot of efficiencies that could be found by just those very, very practical, basic things that could happen.
Yeah, but
Maybe a lot of things were said already, and actually Ali kind of stole my comment, because it was really about there's the UN Food System Summit kicked off a process, and there are these national plans. And if you look at now the NDCs and how they connect to those plans, I mean, there's very little connection. And I think from the perspective of the hidden middle, I think what is really critical is that also the governments in their plans, they would not separate like agriculture and the rest, but have a holistic view on that, because it is in a way it needs to be an integrated way, because if you just address agriculture, which is really important, you will not look into the kind of bigger dimension of economic empowerment and all that. So
I think Asmira, you wanted to add something as well. Please go ahead.
Oh, no. So what everybody was saying is this holistic programmatic approach, policy reforms, and stuff. Actually, all of these things contributes to making bankable projects. So I'm coming from a multilateral development bank. My thinking is financing. So if you have a lot of these things in place, then getting to a bankable project that we can invest in makes it more and easy.
Thank you so much. Ali, please. This is great.
I'm very much inspired by the slogan of that the COP30 is about the truth, right? And I think we need also to be a bit more moving, maybe post COP30, is giving the space more to experts and practitioners than diplomats when we negotiate food system transformation. I'll keep it to this level so I don't get kicked out of the COP.
Does anyone want to respond to that or add a comment on that?
I was earlier today, I was in a panel with Nordic ministers, and then there was a discussion about this topic, and somebody just like, let's talk about business. I mean, actually, this climate change is a business, so it is just we have the solutions, and let's get into that point of time. No more theory and all that. Just drive economic development. I think it's of course a very singular view, but I think ultimately, for instance, if we sell our technology solutions, we actually decarbonize every time, and if we don't, it's the old machinery running there with very high loss rates in terms of waste and water and energy.
All right, Asa.
Yeah, so just a few points. One is that we need to keep in mind all the time that the political and the science timelines are out of bounds, right? We have transgressed 7 out of 9 planetary boundaries, the latest being OC deacidification. And in theory, we should be able to make things good by 2030, when it's going to be the last ratchet up moment of the Paris Agreement, which also coincides with the SDGs. We don't have 4.5 years. We don't have 5 years. We're out of time. So, and we also need to be mindful what we can do in this space. We can have these conversations, which is great, because that creates convergence and coordination. But at the end of the day, the only official agriculture negotiation taking place here is the Sharm el-Sheikh Joint Working Group on Agriculture. And they just finished
Got moved to Bonn.
And yeah, they're just going to finish and say, oh, we cannot agree on anything. Let's push it to Bonn.
Yes.
Another 6 months down the line, right? So, kind of come to your point and the importance of really engaging in the other Rio conventions, right? So particularly biodiversity, but also desertification. So I think one cry for action it would be to, as much as we engage here, we need to become much better those 2 other Rio conventions and then align them. And WWF has done a lot of work on aligning the NDCs and the NBCEPs, and now also looking into desertification goals. And I think that's the right way forward.
So what I'm hearing based on what you guys mentioned is the need for having more practicalities when we come here. Obviously, when we get together, there are solutions. So why don't we get those people in the room to kind of come up with those, to integrate those solutions that already exist? And then from the other one is, well, how can we also, this is not moving fast enough. The sense of urgency is not there for what is needed. Obviously, we support the process, but then how do we identify the other spaces where perhaps things can be moved a bit further down with a bit more urgency? All right, well, I did have one last question for you all, but I think you guys kind of answered it, so now I'm going to ask you guys to think of another answer. So, because you mentioned, obviously, I think you guys are in agreement, but what do you believe must happen to scale adoption of the proven solutions in the hidden middle food system? So you already mentioned one big one, the integration of all of these different frameworks, the integration of a financing framework. But aside from this, from your experience, what can be done essentially? What should happen for these solutions to be more scalable? So who wants to go first? Don't jump all at once. Okay, Ali.
Yeah, that's my favorite topic from our experience. I think if you think as an SME or industrial facility in the global south, and you think of how many topics you have to look at: energy efficiency, you need access to finance, market information, productivity, water, so many topics that you are desperate to get support, whether it's knowledge or technology. And I think in our recommendation, the best investment is in centers of excellence in these countries that could be the one-stop shop for enterprises whenever they want any piece of information on technology, on markets. And that's not easy to do, but that's the right investment. Otherwise, SMEs will get lost in trying to find the right solution, the right technology, the right piece of information, or the right knowledge. They need one-stop shop. And they don't need to end up dealing with 10 centers. Like if I need to do a climate resilient, I have to go there. So these are critical investments, which are not so expensive, especially that, all the companies we have here, they have such knowledge technology free of charge that they could deploy in these countries if they need to know how to process something. So we could gather all the knowledge and technology solutions around us, put it in a functional center of excellence in the country. And by this, we leave the SMEs to try to pick the solution they need and the information they need. Sometimes most of our development programs, they are missing this investment. We think that UNIDO should go and support, FAO should go and support, Gates Foundation should go and support, directly to SMEs, but we should channel our support in a functioning, operational, feasible, affordable center of excellence that can do the job on behalf of all of us.
Amazing. All right, Smira, do you want to add to that? Because there's a big financing portion in that conversation. So
No, I was going to say, well, me being a bank, I was going to say blended finance, right? So I think blended finance needs to be the new mechanism to actually help de-risk some of the operations that SMEs and the hidden middle are actually experiencing. So public finance can actually come in, to support research and development, but that actually enables attraction from private sector to come in and contribute and and invest. But I think one other key is, and I know it comes out here and there, it's really about collaboration, right? Strengthening partnership, strengthening development partners, government, private sector, local communities to come together to provide not just financing, but technical assistance, evidence-based solutions that they can actually scale up some of the operations that they're doing. But one last thing is about technical assistance as well. And I think, from DFIs and as well as other institutions, providing technical assistance in terms of seeds, in terms of technology, on how to green technology even in the hidden middle is actually critical to contribute to this, to climate change, not just to actually acknowledge them and scale up their operations. So it's a mixed bag.
Thank you for that. Fiona?
There's so many catalysts, isn't there? You could pick them all out if you could deploy them. So, I absolutely agree. Finance is key, and actually Brazil's doing a really good blended finance instrument with Eco-Invest. Making sure that the NDCs are integrated, absolutely. And then you look at maybe some other things that maybe aren't so obvious. So we did talk about policies here, but who are the messengers for those policies? So making sure you're working with your trade associations to say, hi, these are our climate policies, these are regenerative agriculture policies. Are you actively working towards that as well? So really leaning into the advocacy and policy space. And then the other side of things, when it comes to consumers, making sure that you're creating a market from consumers, saying, this is really good ingredients, this is certifiable, they're traceable, this is a good quality product, and make sure the demand is there. So honestly, you could name about 15 type of catalysts, and I think we'll probably miss out another 15 more. But I think it's important to try them and go for them because it is very much needed.
Maybe I'll just follow that. I think what was already said about the role of finance is obvious, but I think financial literacy in context of the hidden middle and those stakeholders. Of course, it applies for smallholder farmers and all that, but it's. I used to work for UNICEF, and there were lots of financial literacy programs for personal finance and all that. But I think in this type of things, when we talk about food systems, it should be like a government program in the developing world to run this kind of programs. And then about the vocational training and what Ali was saying about this center of excellence, I think that's an incredibly smart idea. And I guess that could sit in some kind of associations as well if the government doesn't have that knowledge pool and all that. And I'm sure that by co-creating that knowledge pool, it would be it would be very, very valuable. But I think I want to kind of come up with a question rather than an answer, because you promised that we could speak a bit about the coalition that we're trying to cook up, and it would be a question to Ali. Because he did such a great pitch yesterday on this topic, and what does it mean, and why we would need to convene the stakeholders in the hidden middle, and what is the impact that we could be creating. So tell us.
We're working on it together. The idea is, again, maybe related to what I mentioned at the beginning. If we want to transform any supply chain, you need all the stakeholders together around a business case. We call it a business case for the business. You may call it a bankable project or investment. The government may call it a transformative initiative, whatever we call it, as long as we are all together in agreement that we can transform this system at national level, and where the private sector can make a major role. And that's something from our experience that we can sit with the government for ages to try to transform our supply chain. But without the private sector, and I mean the private sector in the country and the private sector outside the country who might have interest in the supply chain. So this idea of coalition or consortium or whatever we will call it at the end is actually not just to keep it at the global level. Yes, we need to advocate for the global level, and we've done it so far already, and others, they've done it. It's just to bring them down again to the supply chain, where things matters, where things can change at country level, sector level. Try to attract all those stakeholders to co-create a program that transforms the food system in that country. And we believe that we need kind of a broker in this because, again, you put the government to the private sector or the academia alone, you need a conveyor. And I think UNIDO claim to be good at this because we are a bit, understand the business language, the industry language, we understand the government needs, we can connect pieces together. And I think by attracting all coalition partners together, but not to talk, to go down at the supply chain level and transform. This is where we deploy technologies, knowledge, we can make the difference. And we believe the hidden middle and those enterprises with those around them, what we call the hidden middle, can make the big difference. Last point, I think to your point, the government, the national plans, this is where we can align these interventions with the national plans. But we cannot align with the national plans by just talking about developing reports about the importance of the hidden middle or the integration in the NDCs. We need to go down the supply chain, and that's what the government loves to see, and love with the private sector also. You can attract their solutions, their investments, when they see something concrete on the ground and not something are being wrote in reports or publications. So I know it's not easy, but maybe the easiest to explain it, join in some of these examples on the ground, maybe it attracts your attention.
So Ali, good thing you're at the Action on Food Hub because you're going from dialogue to action and implementation. So
This is why we decided to have these discussions not in the UNIDO pavilion. We decided not in the SDG one. We said no, Action Food Hub looks exciting.
yeah, so
And also you can speak freely, and I think this is something also. Let's just like. I'll finish with this one. That's a dream I have in the COP. Maybe the next panel in the COP 31. Let's challenge ourselves.
yes.
We come with no predefined questions or narrative. We just raise the questions and good luck in answering it.
There you go. So that's a call to action too and the challenge for the next COP as well. Now, I'm going to invite you, Ali, to close this up. But before that, a big round of applause to our panelists. We're handing it to you to close, Ali.
I mean, I think we cannot close such an important discussion because it's a journey, it's an ongoing discussion. What I could say from, I think Professor Fan reminded us with, like, governments are open. They seems to be excited more to a shared responsibility, a joint action, a private sector involvement. I think we need to translate this into a reality. The private sector seems to be more and more under pressure, but excited to join, unlocking this hidden middle. They have the knowledge, the technology, the solutions. And I think we all know in the UN system, in the IFIs, that there is money, there are programs. It's just a matter of realigning this, or reprogramming this. I think we have to meet somewhere in the middle. We believe the hidden middle is the magnet that attracts everybody for a practical solution on the ground. So I will close by encouraging you to continue advocating for this, but more to join actions on the ground. We're happy to invite you to concrete programs on the ground with our governments, with our private sector, and let's do it together. So thank you so much.